Hello and welcome to another Warhammer 40,000 battle report brought to you by the Legion Wargaming, and the time has come for the Guard to strike back against Hive Fleet Kraken. Following the Tyranids' massacre of their forces across bases throughout this planet, the Guard have decided that they now must be exterminated. The mission today is a Maelstrom of War mission. It is Deadlock, and 2,500 points of Imperial Guard will be taking on 2,500 points of Tyranids from the tendril fleet of the Hive Fleet known as Kraken. The Imperial Guard will be deploying on the far side of the table, and they have already placed objectives 1, 3 and 5, and as you've probably noticed, they are looking to hang as far back from the Tyranids as they can. The Tyranids are looking to push up. They have placed objective 2, objective 4 and objective 6 in these ruins. The battlefield today is a ruined Imperial settlement, and the deployment is Dawn of War. The Guard are desperate to destroy the alien menace. Let's take a look at what they've brought along to do so. This 2,500 point Astra Militarum list is a single combined arms detachment, and it is led by a company command squad, and the commander has brought with him a las cannon team, a master of ordnance, and he is mounted in a chimera with a hull mounted heavy flamer, and he will be commanding the Cadian contingent. There is another HQ. The Armageddon Steel Legion have also brought along a company command squad, and this officer has brought 4 plasma gunners with him, along with a chimera. The Armageddon contingent consists of 3 squads of veterans, all mounted in chimeras, and they each have a missile launcher team and a plasma gun. They will be looking to stay mechanised, I think, and give fire from the top hatches of their armoured transports. The Cadians have brought along an infantry platoon. The platoon command squad has 3 plasma guns and a Vox, and there are 2 squads of Imperial Guard infantry, one with a Vox. This platoon also contains a special weapon squad with 3 flamers, another special weapon squad with 2 plasma guns and a demolition charge, and 3 heavy weapon squads, one with auto cannons and 2 with las cannons. The Guard have also filled their fast attack slots with some air support. They have brought a Vendetta with 3 twin-link las cannons and a Vulture gunship. They are hoping that against the hordes of Tyranids, the twin-link Punishers will be devastating. And as well as infantry, mechanised infantry and air power, they have also brought along some armour. They have brought a Lehman Russ Executioner, plasma cannon sponsons and a las cannon in the hull, a Lehman Russ Exterminator with all heavy bolters to go with its twin-linked turret autocannon, and a squadron of 2 Lehman Russ battle tanks, one with all heavy bolters and the other with a hull las cannon. The Guard, as usual, have turned out in force, and they are packing a lot of firepower. Will it be enough to annihilate the Tyranid menace? Let's see. What have Hive Fleet Kraken sent to consume these guardsmen? This 2,500 point Tyranid army is unbound and is led by a flying hive tyrant. He has the miasma cannon and wings, and he is given extra synapse support by a brood of Tyranid warriors and a single zone thrope. There is a scuttling swarm of 30 gaunts and 2 tervigons to hopefully spawn a lot more gaunts. Both of these tervigons have electroshock grubs, crushing claws, cluster spines and adrenal glands. For some long range support, the swarm has brought along a brood of 3 biovores, and for some tank hunting, a flying hive crone. The Haruspex, following his snack of Janezar, the Phoenix Lord, is back, and he wants to try some Leman Russ tanks today. And we have the terrifying, tunnelling, close assault punch of this army. 2 broods of 6 Raveners, each with rending claws and death spitters, and the big tunnelling bugs. A Trigon Prime and 2 Morlocks. That should give the guardsmen something to worry about beneath their feet. This is the army that defeated the Eldar, and it is the army that defeated the Raven Guard. Let's see if the Guard can blow them away. Moving on to deployment. And the armies have deployed, with the Guard making a powerful statement. They have deployed a wall of armour in their centre. All of the Armageddon Steel Legion veterans are still embarked in their chimeras, and they can give fire with their missile launchers from the top hatches. And on the top floors of the central building, the Guard have deployed 2 las cannon teams. They are looking to put out a huge amount of fire from their centre. They have refused their right flank. They have just deployed the Leman Russ Executioner holding Objective 1, and the Armageddon Company Command Squad with all their plasma guns as a second line force to respond to any threats that may threaten this flank. The Guard infantry are well aware of the burrowing monstrosities that the Tyranids have often used against them, and they are under orders to swarm forwards and occupy the top floors of these ruined buildings as quickly as they can. The Guard infantry here moving into this one, and far over on the Guard left flank the rest of the platoon ready to swarm forward towards the gantry building. The autocannons are deployed on the top floors of this ruin, and they have a commanding field of fire from there. And meanwhile, the rest of the Guard heavy armour is hanging back. They have the range and the firepower to do a lot of damage, but they do not want the Tyranids to close with them too quickly. Finally, the Cadian Company Command Squad has deployed in their Chimera, and they can give fire with their las cannon team and their Master of Ordnance from right at the back. Looks like a very formidable line that the Guard have deployed. Will it suit the Deadlock mission? They are holding all 3 objectives that they placed, but will they be able to move forward if necessary? I think the Guard commander might just be looking to blow the Tyranids off the table. We will see. The Tyranids have responded by deploying their flying monstrous creatures on their right flank. If the Guard are going to move forward and occupy the top floors of these buildings, then they will be scoured by the miasma cannon and the drool cannon from the hive crone, and also from the biovores throwing their spore mines from right at the back. One brood of Raveners is ready to slither forward as quickly as possible towards the guard, and they are backed up by a brood of Tyranid warriors. The first Tervigon is looking to move through the gap in the buildings, spawning gaunts as he goes towards the centre of the formidable Imperial Guard line. The other brood of Raveners have taken cover in these ruined buildings. They can move very quickly through terrain, and they are just going to hug the cover until they can get close to their targets. And the big brood of Gaunts with the other Tervigon is occupying the Tyranid centre. They're looking to swarm forwards towards the guard line. And over on the Tyranid left flank, it is a real monster's ball. Both Morlocks, the Trigon Prime, the Haruspecs, they are forming a very considerable threat, especially to the guard armour deployed across from them. Have the guard deployed enough on their right flank to hold the monsters back? We will see. And finally, the Zoanthrope is floating along behind this ruin to provide some more synapse coverage. This battle is shaping up to be a fascinating conflict. The Astra Militarum deployed first, so unless the Tyranids can seize the initiative, we will be going into Astra Militarum turn 1. The Tyranids have failed to seize the initiative, and at the start of their turn the Guard drew their 6 objectives. They drew Ascendancy, which is good as they are already holding 3 objectives. Secure Objectives 1, which they are holding. 5, which they are also holding. And 6, which it doesn't look like they'll be able to achieve this turn. They also drew Overwhelming Firepower, which certainly suits this Guard army, and Assassinate. Could we see some early targeting of the Hive Tyrant? Let's see. The Guard are enacting their plan. Their entire armour and heavy weapon line has held position, and only their guardsmen have come running forwards. This squad, followed up by the platoon command squad, are moving to occupy this ruined building, and on the far left flank the other squad of infantry, backed up by the special weapons squad with 3 flamers, are moving as quickly as they can towards this gantry building. And the rest of the guard line prepares to give fire. Fortunate draw of objectives and a very brief movement phase from the guard, but this could be a crucial phase. Astra Militarum shooting phase turn 1. End of Astra Militarum shooting phase turn 1, and the phase opened with this squad of guard obeying their order to move and run up into this building, closely followed up by the platoon command squad, still in the shadow of the building to the rear. The other half of the platoon, unfortunately they both rolled 1s for their run move, and they have failed to reach the relative safety of any buildings on this side. The guard line then opened fire, and although it took the fire of the Leman Russ Executioner, all the Chimeras and their embarked missile launchers, and both squads of lascannon teams, the first Morlock went down, earning the Astra Militarum first blood. The rest of the guard tanks opened fire on the flying Hive Tyrant, starting with the Cadian command squad, who managed to hit it with both their lascannon from the top hatch of their Chimera, and the Master of Ordnance also managed to land a barrage on the monster, but it made its cover saves and it was unharmed. Then the Leman Russ Squadron open fire with their battle cannons. They managed to wound the Hive Tyrant and take down 2 Raveners slithering through the ruins next to it. The Exterminator added its fire and caused another wound with its twin-linked autocannons, and the autocannon teams on the top floors of this ruin building managed to cause another wound. So the Hive Tyrant has taken a real battering from the Guard this turn in their attempt to achieve assassinate, but he remains alive on 1 wound thanks to some good cover saves. But it has been a very good opening turn from the Guard. They've earned first blood, they've taken out one of the Tyranid monsters already, and the Hive Tyrant has been severely wounded. They've also done quite well with their objectives. Let's see exactly how many points they've managed to accumulate during their first turn. It really has been an excellent first turn for the Imperial Guard. They managed to get 3 points for ascendancy. They also managed to secure objective 5 and secure objective 1 for a couple more points. They managed to get overwhelming firepower for taking down the Morlock, which also granted them first blood, meaning that at the end of their first turn the Guard have scored 7 points, bringing the score to 7 points to the Guard and none yet to the Tyranids, going into Tyranid Turn 1. Start of Tyranid Turn 1, and the objectives they have drawn are secure objective 1, which is quite a long way away, no prisoners, blood and guts, domination. I don't think domination is achievable, but a bit of luck, they also drew secure objective 6 twice. So, a varied selection of objectives for the Tyranids. Let's see how they go about achieving them. Tyranids, turn 1, movement phase. End of Tyranid movement phase, turn 1, and with the exception of the Biovores, the whole Tyranid line has surged forward. Both the Crone and the Hive Tyrant have taken to the air. They're going to try and use their template weapons to achieve no prisoners. There's some juicy targets for those running along the ground there. The Raveners have slithered forwards. They have their eyes set on the Guard that are busy occupying the other end of this building. And the Tyranid warriors have moved up to secure objective 6. This Tervigon came lumbering forward and managed to spawn 10 new gaunts, but he has run out. He will not be spawning anymore. The central brood of Ravenous has moved with frightening speed forwards through these ruins, and they are followed by the big brood of 30 gaunts and the other Tervigon, who has spawned another brood of 12, and he has not run out, he has more to give. The Haruspecs and the Trigon Prime and the Morlock all moved through cover as quickly as they can. They are trying now desperately to close the gap after seeing one Morlock shot down in one turn by the Guard armour line. And finally the Zoanthrope is hovering up behind the Trigon Prime. The Tyranids now feel that they have a lot of ground to cover. The Guard deployment has been very wise and their firing is very dangerous. But the Tyranids have one thing that the Guard do not, and that is Psykers. Going into Tyranid turn 1, Psychic phase. End of Tyranid Psychic phase turn 1, and the Hive Tyrant began by failing to cast the Horror, but he did manage to successfully follow that failure up with casting Paroxysm on the platoon command squad with plasma guns, reducing their weapon skill and ballistic skill to 1. The only other power successfully summoned this phase was this Tervigon managed to cast Catalyst on both himself and the Haruspecs. Going into Tyranid shooting phase, turn 1. End of Tyranid shooting phase, turn 1, and most of the Tyranid line ran forward, desperately trying to close the gap between themselves and their prey. They are getting quite close to the Imperial Guard tanks now, but there's another turn of firing to come from that formidable line before they can engage it in assault. The Hive Tyrants unleashed the miasma cannon over the special weapon squad that were following up the Guard infantry squad and melted all of them, earning a point for no prisoners. The Hive Crone killed 3 guardsmen from the infantry squad right in front of it with its dual cannon, and another 2 were brought down by a not particularly accurate barrage from the Biovores. Still, with the Hive Tyrant flying overhead, it proved too much for the remaining 5 guardsmen, and they have broken morale and they are falling back. So not much firing, but what there was quite effective. We have a cheeky assault attempt. Let's see if the Raveners can make it into this guard squad on their first turn, trying to earn blood and guts in Tyranid assault phase, turn 1. End of Tyranid assault phase, turn 1, and the Raveners slithered up this building with terrifying speed. A panicked volley from the guardsmen managed to wound one of the Raveners, but then they waded in with their rending claws, dragged down 5 guardsmen and tore the rest to pieces as the survivors tried to flee, earning the Tyranids a point for blood and guts. The Tyranids have done quite well with their objectives this turn. Let's see how many points they have scored. End of Tyranid turn 1, and they managed to score 2 points for holding objective 6 twice. Thanks to the Tyranid warriors, they scored a point for no prisoners when the Hive Tyrant took out the special weapons squad, and they scored a point for blood and guts as the Raveners tore an infantry squad to pieces. One more and they could have got D3 for no prisoners, but they will have to settle for 4 points during their first turn, bringing the score at the end of turn 1 to 7 points to the Guard and only 4 points to the Tyranids, going into Astra Militarum, turn 2. Start of Astra Militarum turn 2, and the Guardsmen are quite happy with the way this battle is progressing so far. For their objectives, they have held on to assassinate from last turn because they really want this Hive Tyrant to go down. They discarded secure objective 6, but unfortunately they have redrawn it again straight away. Their other objectives this turn are secure objective 2, which I think is out of the question really, and psychological warfare. Never easy to achieve against the Tyranids, unfortunately, but their final objective is perfect for when you're fighting Tyranids, big game hunter. So a lot of potential for some points to be scored this turn. Let's see how the Guard go about it, and let's also see if their air power is going to fly in from reserve. End of Astra Militarum movement phase, turn 2, and the phase opened with the falling back Guard squad failing to rally, and they have headed off into the hills. They do not fancy taking on the Tyranids anymore. But the good news is the Vulture gunship has arrived. He has come strafing his way across the Guard line, and he has his twin-link punishers fixed on both of the Tyranid flying monsters. The Guard's platoon command squad have stumbled back. They're still thrashing about in pain from the paroxysm that has been put on them, but they would have needed 6s to hit the flying Hive Tyrant anyway, so they may as well try and light him up with their 3 plasma guns. Could be a very, very good result for the Guard if they can take him down. The rest of the line, the autocannons, all the Leman Russes, the command squads, all the veterans in their chimeras, all the way over to their right flank, have all stayed stationary. They are preparing for another devastating round of fire. Let's see how they get on. Astra Militarum, shooting phase, turn 2. End of Astra Militarum, shooting phase, turn 2, and in order to free the Vulture gunship up to target the Hive Crone, all the guardsmen that could tried to target the Hive Tyrant. He jinked his way through a hail of fire from the platoon command squad, the autocannon teams, the company command squad and their chimera, and the Leman Russ, all the las cannon teams, and all of the chimeras and the missile launchers contained therein. And after all that, he started on 1 wound and he was left on 1 wound. So the Vulture was forced to open fire with its twin-linked Punisher cannons, and finally the Hive Tyrant went down under the hail of bullets. But this phase, the Hive Tyrant has absorbed the firepower of nearly the entire Imperial Guard army. Some dreadful luck from the Guard. The Leman Russ battle tank squadron did manage to land a battle cannon shell on the Raveners, taking out 2 of them. But all in all, thanks to the Hive Tyrant, this has been an incredibly disappointing turn for the Guard after so promising a start. But let's see how they've got on with their objectives. End of Astra Militarum turn 2, and they scored a point for Assassinate, a point for Big Game Hunter, and a point for Slay the Warlord, all thanks to the demise of the Hive Tyrant. So they scored 3 points during this turn, bringing the score to 10 points to the Astra Militarum versus only 4 to the Tyranids. But the Hive Mind is pleased. The Hive Tyrant has absorbed so much firepower that the rest of the swarm may now just about get close enough to start tearing the guardsmen to pieces. Let's see, going into Tyranid turn 2. Start of Tyranids turn 2, and the Hive Mind has sent out the impulse to the swarm to secure this battlefield and push up on the praise line. They have to secure objective 1, which they carried over from previous turn. They have to secure objective 3 twice. They have to secure objective 4, which they are currently holding, and they have to achieve ascendancy, which it looks like they will be able to do. Whether they will be able to secure objective 1 and objective 3 twice, both of which are in the heart of the Imperial Guard armour line, remains to be seen. Going into Tyranid, turn 2, movement phase. End of Tyranid turn 2 movement phase, and the Biovores and the Tyranid warriors have held position. The Biovores to give fire and the Tyranid warriors to keep them under the Hive Mind's control. The rest of the Tyranids have moved forward again. The unfortunate company command squad finds itself the target of the Raveners' attention. Don't think they're going to be around for very much longer. The Hive Crone peeled round and has vector struck the Vulture. Managed to do 1 penetrating hit that has shaken the Imperial aircraft. The Tervigon and the small brood of Gaunts that he has spawned continue to move up as quickly as they can. They cannot match the speed of the Raveners, who are now looking to tear their way into some Imperial armoured transports. This Tervigon has shuffled up slightly, not very far, because he is too busy spawning. He has spawned another 8 Gaunts and he has still not run out. There is a real wave of gaunts running up the centre of this battlefield now. The Haruspex, the Trigon Prime and the Morlock continue to move as quickly as they can towards the Imperial Guard armour. Once they get close, surely they will tear it apart like tinfoil, and the Zone Throat continues to hover up in support. The Tyranids are now putting a lot of pressure on the Imperial Guard, but their psychic phase may be affected quite badly by the loss of the Flying Hive Tyrant. Let's see. Tyranid Psychic Phase, turn 2. End of Tyranid Psychic Phase, turn 2, and with nothing particularly useful in range of the Tervigons or the Zone Throat, the right hand Tervigon here cast Dominion, and this Tervigon has cast Catalyst on himself and the Haruspex again. Quite a quiet Psychic Phase without the Hive Tyrant. Going into Tyranid Shooting Phase, turn 2. End of Tyranid turn 2 Shooting Phase, and the Tyranids have continued to surge forwards. All the monsters on the left flank and all the Gaunts scurrying forward in the wake of the Haruspex, followed up by the Tervigon and the little brood of Gaunts that have just been spawned have been left back to look after Objective 4. This Tervigon and his little brood of Gaunts only managed 1 inch run each, so they haven't moved up very far. The Hive Crone managed to knock another whole point off of the Vulture gunship with a tentaclid attack. Both broods of Raveners are preparing to assault their respective targets, so they have not moved. And the Biovores begun to target the Astra Militarum central building. They managed to take out a las cannon team with their spore mine barrage, but the survivors have held morale. Not much happening in the Tyranid shooting phase besides a lot of running and scurrying, but we do have a couple of assaults. Going into Tyranid assault phase, turn 2. End of Tyranid assault phase, turn 2, and the central brood of Raveners managed to tear their way into the central Chimera, wrecking it, but the stalwart veterans of the Steel Legion simply open the rear hatch and have taken up firing positions on the ground floor of the ruined building. The other Raveners, they took 1 wound from the Cadian Lieutenant's pistol as they slithered in, but then all of the guardsmen were torn to bits. The Raveners have consolidated as close to the guardsmen as possible. See if they can avoid being targeted by battle cannon shells. The Tyranids have finally reached the Imperial Guard line in places, but they are finding it very hard to secure their objectives at the moment. Let's see how many victory points they managed to get during their second turn. End of Tyranid turn 2, and they fail to secure Objective 1 or Objective 3. These are all troops clustered around it. They have objective secured, whereas the Tyranid army is unbound. Raveners are a fast attack choice anyway, so they wouldn't have objective secured, but they did manage to secure 3 objectives and achieve ascendancy. 2, 4 and 6, but unfortunately they only scored 1 point for that, and they all scored another point because they had to secure Objective 4, meaning that in their second turn they only scored 2 points, bringing the score at the end of Tyranid turn 2 to 10 points to the Guardsmen and only 6 to the Tyranids. Let's see if the Tyranids can weather another round of the Guards' firepower. Going into Astra Militarum, turn 3. Start of Astra Militarum turn 3, and it has been an unfortunate draw of objectives for the Guard. The end of last turn they discarded secure objective 2, but that meant they had to keep psychological warfare and secure objective 6, both of which are very tricky to achieve this turn. They have also drawn secure objective 4, which again is not going to be easy for them, but they have also drawn no prisoners, which they do have a chance of getting some points for. Let's see if they can. Going into Astra Militarum turn 3. End of Astra Militarum turn 3, movement phase, and the bad news keeps coming for the Guardsmen. The Vendetta has failed once again to arrive from reserve, and that aircraft is carrying another special weapons squad with a demolition charge and some plasma guns. They would have been quite useful. As the Guard have realised that they don't have much chance of securing objectives 4 or 6 right back in the Tyranids deployment zone, they are continuing with their plan. They are holding position and giving fire. The only unit in the Guard army that has moved is the Vulture, which has dropped down into hover mode, and even though it is shaken and will be firing snapshots, it's going to try and clear the Raveners out before they can take out any more of the Guard forces on their left flank. The Guard did draw no prisoners, so this shooting phase could be crucial. Let's see how they get on. Astra Militarum shooting phase turn 3. End of Astra Militarum turn 3 shooting phase, and even though it was firing snapshots, the amount of firepower put out by the Vulture gunship still managed to down 2 Raveners from the brood that just overran the platoon command squad. The final 2 remaining were finished off by fire from the Leman Russ Exterminator and the company command squad and their Chimera. The autocannons, still on the roof of that ruin building, managed to bring down one of the Tyranid warriors holding objective 6. So that's a point for no prisoners. The rest of the Guard line, the Leman Russ battle tanks, the whole Armageddon Steel Legion platoon and their Chimeras, and the las cannon team still in the top floors of this ruin building, all targeted the Tervigon that was anchoring the Tyranid right, and they brought it down along with a few gaunts, both from scattering battle cannon shells and in the synaptic backlash from the death of the Tervigon, and that has made the Tyranid right flank look very, very weak compared to the Imperial Guard forces on this side of the table. Still, the Tervigon did absorb a lot of firepower, everything in fact except for the Leman Russ Executioner, which desperately unloaded all of its plasma weaponry into the rapidly approaching Haruspecs, managed to cause 3 wounds, but the beast is still coming. So the Guard managed to wipe out the Raveners and the Tervigon, but could not get that 3rd unit that they needed for the D3 for no prisoners. So at the end of Astra Militarum turn 3, they have only scored 1 point, bringing the score to 11 points to the Guardsmen versus 6 to the Tyranids, going into Tyranid turn 3. Start of Tyranid turn 3, and they did not discard any objectives. At the end of their last turn they are happy to carry over, securing objective 1 and securing objective 3 twice. They will have to get through quite a lot of Guardsmen and their transports to do it, but we shall see. They have been rewarded by a fortunate draw as well. They have to harness the warp, and even though both the Hive Tyrant and 1 Tervigon is down, they still have another Tervigon and the Zone Throat left. Surely they will be able to summon up some psychic power. Going into Tyranid turn 3 movement phase. End of Tyranid turn 3 movement phase, and with the death of the Tervigon on the Tyranid right, This brood of gaunts failed their instinctive behaviour test, but they have decided to seek cover, which suits the purposes of the hive mind, since it keeps them moving forwards. Fortunately, the hive crone passed its test and flew over the line of Imperial Guard armour, vector striking this chimera and causing a glancing hit. The rest of the Tyranids in the centre and on the left have closed, and they are preparing to smash their way into the guard now. Unbelievably, this Tervigon has spawned another 8 gaunts, and still he has not run out. So we have a carpet of scuttling termagants on this side. But things are looking a bit grim as the Haruspex, the Trigon Prime and the Morlock all close in. The assault that the Tyranids launched on their right has been comprehensively destroyed. The guard armour on this side have done an excellent job. The only Tyranid units remaining on this side of the battlefield are the depleted brood of Tyranid warriors and the biovores, who are still happily chucking their spore mines up the table. This could be a decisive turn. The tide of red has swept forward. Will it break on the rocks of the guard armour, or will it wash them away? Let's see. Going into Tyranid turn 3 psychic phase. End of Tyranid psychic phase turn 3, and the Tervigon remaining in the swarm managed to cast Catalyst on itself and the Trigon Prime, and follow that up by casting Dominion. That earns the Tyranids a point for Harness the Warp. Going into Tyranid shooting phase turn 3. End of Tyranid shooting phase turn 3, and the biovores tried to target the centre of the guard's position again, knock out some more las cannon teams, but they were wildly inaccurate and scattered a long way off the table. And the few gaunts that made it into cover also tried to target the las cannon teams, but with no effect. These broods of gaunt shuffled up a couple of inches, but with a lot of the Tyranid monsters preparing to charge, this was a very, very quick phase, and the next one could be devastating. Tyranids assault phase turn 3. End of Tyranid assault phase turn 3, and it has not gone the way the hive mind would like. The Raveners managed to do 2 hull points on this chimera but failed to destroy it. The Haruspex only managed to do 1 hull point on this chimera, but despite the hive crone's vector strike doing another hull point, the chimera is still functional with 1 left, and the Trigon Prime only managed to do 1 hull point of damage on the Leman Russ Executioner. So the red tide has hit the rocks and failed to sweep them away, although all 3 of these vehicles that were assaulted will be firing snapshots in the upcoming turn. Still, the Tyranids have been held back by the armour. A good turn of firing may sweep them away next turn. But let's see how the Tyranids got on with their objectives during their 3rd turn. End of Tyranid turn 3, and due to the resilience of the Imperial Guard armour, they have failed to secure either objective 1 or objective 3, which they had to secure twice. So during their 3rd turn they only get 1 point, which they got for Harness the Warp, bringing the score at the end of Tyranid turn 3 to 11 points to the Guard, and still only 7 to the Tyranids going into Astra Militarum turn 4, and the arrival at last of their vendetta. Start of Astra Militarum turn 4, and they have had to keep psychological warfare carried over from previous turn, but they have drawn secure objective 3, which they are currently doing with an objective secured unit, and they've also drawn behind enemy lines. Maybe the Vendetta, we'll see. It's coming on in Astra Militarum, turn 4, movement phase. End of Astra Militarum, movement phase, turn 4, and the Vendetta has come. Flying over the Imperial Guard central position with its las cannons targeted on the last remaining Tervigon of the swarm. The Vulture gunship has once again zoomed into flight mode, and he has lots and lots of good targets to choose from for his twin-linked Punishers. The Guard armour has swung around. They have blown apart everything that was coming at them on this side of the field, and now they're going to add their firepower onto this part of the Tyranid swarm. The rest of the guardsmen are still following the plan. They are not getting out of their vehicles. They know they will be easy prey if they do. They are preparing to fire a barrage of plasma and missiles out of the top hatches, supported by the las cannon teams still in the ruin building, and the autocannon teams who are still occupying the top floors of this building. A good turn of firing here could sweep the Tyranids away. Let's see. Astra Militarum shooting phase, turn 4. End of Astra Militarum shooting phase, turn 4, and it has been a good phase for the guardsmen. Although it took the firepower of the Vendetta, the snap shooting chimeras and their passengers, the las cannon teams, and the Imperial Guard armour that is swinging round, the Tervigon in the centre was killed, and the resulting synaptic backlash took out 19 gaunts from the squads that were surrounding him. And the Vulture followed that up with a strafing run that tore the Haruspex to pieces, easily taking its last 2 wounds. So it looks like the heart has been ripped out of this side of the Tyranid swarm. That was a brilliant, brilliant phase of firing from the Astra Militarum. Although they did have to focus their fire considerably, they have taken out 2 very, very high priority targets, and the Tyranids are now looking very, very weak. But because this Chimera and the Leman Russ Executioner were both stunned, they could not move away from the Tyranids attacking them. So we have ongoing combats to resolve in Astra Militarum Assault Phase turn 4. End of Astra Militarum Assault Phase turn 4, and unfortunately for the guardsmen, both the Raveners and the Trigon managed to tear the vehicles they were still in base-to-base contact with apart. The Leman Russ Executioner and this Chimera were both wrecked, and the squad of Steel Legion veterans have poured out into the rear of the ruined building. But has the line of armour held the Tyranids up long enough? Hard to say, especially as it's Tyranid turn 4 next. But first, let's see how the guardsmen got on with their objectives in their 4th turn. Unfortunately for the Imperial Guardsmen, the destruction of this Chimera at the hands of the Raveners and the subsequent emergency disembarkation of the Steel Legion has meant that they no longer control Objective 3. So, unfortunately, as they failed also to achieve psychological warfare, and they failed in this turn to achieve behind enemy lines, they unfortunately have scored no points in their 4th turn, meaning that the score remains 11 points to the Guard and 7 points to the Tyranids, going into Tyranid turn 4. Start of Tyranid turn 4, and they are happy with the objectives that they are carrying over from their previous turn. They have to secure objective 1, and they have to secure objective 3 twice. And now they are ideally positioned to do so. Going into Tyranid, turn 4, movement phase. End of Tyranid movement phase, turn 4, and the phase opened with this brood of gaunts that were out of synapse range, failing their instinctual behaviour test and deciding to fall back. And the remnants of this little brood decided to do exactly the same. The rest of the Tyranid line, as they have done for the whole battle, have continued to push up. The gaunts cannot draw a good line of sight to the Armageddon Steel Legion Guardsmen that have spilled out the rear of their chimeras, so they have not been much use during this battle. The Morlock and the Trigon Prime are continuing their mission of prizing open the Imperial Guard vehicles. They're closing in for assault, and the Hive Crone has dropped down into gliding mode, and he still has a couple of tentaclids. He can contribute a couple of hull points maybe. The Zoanthrope moving up just to keep a synapse bubble going on this flank, and the Raveners that destroyed this Chimera are moving through the ruins to tear the Armageddon infantry squad that came spilling out to pieces. And the only remaining units on the Tyranid right flank, the Warriors and the Biovores, have held position. The Biovores to give fire and the Warriors to keep them in synapse control. The Guard have shot down both Tervigons and the Flying Hive Tyrants, so the Tyranids only have the Zoanthrope left. Let's see what he can do in Tyranid Psychic phase, turn 4. End of Tyranid turn 4 Psychic phase, and the Zoanthrope attempted to manifest onslaught on the large brood of gaunts to try and give them a good target for their massed flesh borers, but the Guard managed to deny it, and then he failed to summon up a Warp Blast. The Tyranid Psychic phase really has been shut down by the death of a lot of their synapse creatures. So let's see how they get on in their shooting phase, turn 4. End of Tyranid shooting phase, turn 4, and the bioelectric pulse from the Trigon Prime combined with the last 2 tentaclids from the Hive Crone managed to destroy the Armageddon Command Squad's Chimera. They have disembarked, and they may well now have to face the charge of the angry Trigon Prime. The Raveners shot down 3 guardsmen in the ruins with their Death Spitters as they prepare to charge them, and the Biovores once again targeted Imperial Guard las cannon teams, but they're so close to the edge of the battlefield that once again the Biovores scattered off and did no damage. And the gaunts that could ran up, but only an inch. But this is the crucial phase. Tyranid assault phase, turn 4. End of Tyranid assault phase, turn 4, and the Morlock managed to finally crack open the last Steel Legion Chimera. Now all of the Steel Legion have deployed. This squad came spilling out of the back as the Morlock took their transport's last hull point, but at least their sharpshooting plasma gunner wounded the Morlock from the top hatch as he charged in. The Trigon Prime could not negotiate his way over the wreck of this Chimera. He failed his charge, and the sharpshooting command squad plasma gunners managed to cause 2 wounds on him on overwatch. Very good from the guardsmen. But the Raveners once again slithered into the guardsmen who were taking cover. They took no damage from Overwatch, no damage from the guardsmen's attacks, and they tore them to shreds. They have consolidated onto Objective 3. So, the heroic Steel Legion have borne the brunt of the Tyranid attack on this flank, but now all of the guardsmen have come spilling out. They are not pinned, and they are preparing to give a lot of fire back onto the Tyranids. Let's see how the Tyranids got on with their objectives in their 4th turn. Objectives at the end of Tyranid turn 4, and they have managed to secure Objective 1 with the Trigon Prime, but the Morlock destroying this Chimera and causing the Armageddon Steel Legion veterans that are inside to come spilling out has allowed them to put a guardsman within 3 inches of Objective 3. The guardsman has objective secured. The Raveners have failed. And the Tyranids had to score that one twice, meaning that in their 4th turn they only score 1 victory point, bringing the total score to 11 points to the Guard and only 8 to the Tyranids going into Astra Militarum turn 5. Start of Astra Militarum turn 5, and like the Tyranids in their previous turn, they are happy with the objectives they are carrying forwards. They have to secure Objective 3. Surely the heroic Steel Legion will have no problem continuing to do that. And they also have to get behind enemy lines. The arrival of the Vendetta with a special weapon squad embarked should allow them to do that. The rest of the guard line is going to unleash a withering hail of firepower onto the Tyranids. Going into Astra Militarum turn 5 movement phase. End of Astra Militarum movement phase turn 5, and the Vendetta has dropped down into hover mode and making all speed to get into the Tyranid deployment zone. The Vulture gunship has likewise dropped down into hover mode. He has an excellent choice of targets for his twin-link Punisher, so expect a devastating volley from him. All of the Armageddon Steel Legion survivors have held position. They have their plasma guns, their missile launchers. They just want to blow these big bugs apart, and so do the las cannon teams. The Guard Central Firebase has come under heavy assault, but could they be gaining the upper hand? We'll see. And the Cadian armour, having blasted this side of the battlefield clear of Tyranids, are now going to turn their attention to this side. And finally, the autocannon teams are going to add their fire as well. This could be a devastating round of firing from the Guard. Let's see. Astra Militarum shooting phase, turn 5. End of Astra Militarum shooting phase, turn 5, and it has been as devastating as we were expecting. The Cadian armour blasted the remaining Raveners to pieces at close range, well and truly securing Objective 3. The squad of Steel Legion veterans that were forced out of their destroyed transport by the Morlock opened fire on it, and they did 2 wounds, one with their plasma gun and one with their missile launcher. And then the twin-linked Punisher opened fire, and the Morlock disintegrated under the hail of shells. And the las cannon teams combined their fire with another squad of Steel Legion veterans and the Armageddon Company Command Squad, and in a hail of plasma, missiles, las cannon fire, the Trigon Prime went down, thrashing to the last. The Guard have stood firm. They have shot down 2 monstrous creatures this turn and the very dangerous threat that is the Raveners, and now all the Tyranids have is a swarm of gaunts in the centre, and they are milling around in confusion. They do not know what to do. Meanwhile, the Vendetta and its passengers have moved flat out, moving into the Tyranid deployment zone, securing behind enemy lines. So, at the end of their 5th turn, the Astra Militarum managed to get a point for behind enemy lines. They also get a point for securing Objective 3, meaning that they are on 13 points and the Tyranids are on 8. Can the Tyranids pull it back? They have precious little left now. Let's see, going into their turn 5. Start of Tyranid turn 5, and it would be fair to say the hive mind is getting desperate. The Tyranids have held on to secure Objective 3 twice, on the off chance that these Gaunts can gun down the Steel Legion with their flesh borers and seize it. But first they will have to pass their instinctive behaviour test, so they're up against it. Let's see. Tyranid movement phase turn 5. End of Tyranid movement phase turn 5, and as luck would have it, both the big brood of Gaunts and the smaller one that was spawned by the Tervigon were just within synapse range of the Zone Throat, the last surviving focus of the hive mind's will on this battlefield, and they have been driven forward. If they can gun down all these Steel Legion, they will secure Objective 3 twice. And the Hive Crone passed its test. It is gliding in to melt as many guardsmen as possible with its dual cannon. All the Gaunts that were out of synapse range, they have all begun to stream back in confusion. They don't know what's going on now. And the Tyranid warriors are still directing the fire of the Biovores from right back on this flank. The Tyranids may be able to get a couple of points this turn, but is it too little, too late? Let's see. We still have a psychic phase. The Zone Throat may be able to do something. Tyranid psychic phase turn 5. End of Tyranid psychic phase turn 5, and with a 1 rolled for warp charges, the Zone Throat has done the only thing he can, and he has cast Dominion to try and extend his synapse control and rally the Tyranid swarm. Going into Tyranid shooting phase turn 5. End of Tyranid shooting phase turn 5, and the Gaunts did manage to shoot down 4 of the Steel Legion guardsmen. That has driven them from Objective 3, and the Gaunts are securing it, although the guardsmen have passed their morale test. And the dual cannon from the Hive Crone melted the Armageddon company commander and 2 of his plasma gunners. There is 1 left, but he has passed morale. These Armageddon Steel Legion veterans truly are heroes of the Imperium. The Biovores once again targeted the las cannon teams, and once again they have scattered off the table. The Gaunts are going to attempt to assault the remaining Steel Legion from the squad they targeted. Let's see how they get on. Tyranid turn 5, assault phase. End of Tyranid assault phase turn 5, and the Gaunts did make it in to the Steel Legion veterans. They lost 1 Gaunt from Overwatch fire and another 2 to the Guardsmen's bayonets, but they dragged all the remaining Guardsmen from that squad down. They have consolidated to make sure they are holding Objective 3. So given the very, very few usable units that the Tyranids have remaining this turn, they have done quite well. Let's see how they got on with their objectives. End of Tyranid turn 5, and they did manage to get 2 points for securing Objective 3 twice, bringing their score to 10. The Guardsmen have 13, but the game has ended, and since both sides also have Linebreaker, that brings the final score to 14 points to the Astra Militarum and 11 to the Tyranids. This has been a great game. The Guardsman's strategy really paid off. Hanging back, hosing the Tyranid swarm with fire, and then making the Tyranids prize them out of their transports before hosing them with fire once again. If anything, the scoreline is quite flattering to the Tyranids because the Guard still have this massive armoured wedge in action, whereas the Tyranids, they just have some gaunts, a zone throat, the hive crone, and the useless biovores all the way back on this flank. This Tyranid swarm overran the Eldar, it defeated the Raven Guard. Who would have thought that the Astra Militarum would stand victorious at the end of this epic game. Thanks very much for watching. Please subscribe to our channel and we will keep producing as many Warhammer 40,000 battle reports as we can. Go Guard. See ya.